Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a makeup and movie Monday. Yay! We're at Monday again. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Today I'm here to talk about a very special film. Even though all the films that I talk about are quite special in their own way, but this movie is kind of another movie that I've grown up with, and I did a poll on my Instagram stories to kind of decide as to what film to talk about, because there are obviously so many movies that I do want to talk about, and I want to kind of maybe prioritize ones that people want to see a bit more. So I chose the first Hellraiser movie or Se7en, and pretty much everyone had chosen Se7en. So today we are going to be talking about David Fincher's Se7en. As always, I'll be putting on a full face of makeup, but the makeup's always going to be kind of second fiddle, if some people like to say it. I have my notes with me, so I apologise if I am constantly looking down. It's just that I feel like I need to have notes so I don't mess up. Even though I absolutely adore this movie. I've seen it many times, but sometimes I like to refresh myself and just make sure I'm saying the right thing, because I don't have any editing, so I'm just talking. But yes, let's get on with it, I guess. Yeah, so Se7en, like I mentioned, is directed by David Fincher. It came out in 1995, and previous to that, David Fincher had only directed Alien 3. I mean, if you've seen Alien 3, you'd probably know why I made that face. He is not a big fan of that movie either, so he tends to kind of steer away from it most times, but the director's cut is pretty good, so check that out. And previously he'd kind of done music videos, so he's done multiple music videos for like Madonna. He did one for Aerosmith, and then he did a couple for Michael Jackson as well, so that is pretty awesome. And now he's like this just amazing director. Like, he's done just some amazing movies, so please check out David Fincher, basically. He's going to be famous one day. But yeah, it also stars, well, it just stars, David Fincher's not actually in it. It stars Morgan Freeman, so, you know, God himself, as in Bruce Almighty, who had previously, you know, done quite a few big films. Like, previous to that, he had done Shawshank Redemption, which is one of the most, I know I say this a lot, but it is one of the most amazing movies in this entire freaking world. I adore that movie. I know I don't think I've ever met someone who doesn't like Shawshank Redemption. If you don't like it, just leave. And previous to Se7en coming out, he was in a movie called Outbreak, which is a movie about kind of an outbreak around the world, basically, and it is a really good movie. It's got Dustin Hoffman in it as well, so if you haven't seen it, do check it out. So he plays Detective Somerset, who is essentially like a retired detective. I think he's like he's on the brink of retirement, like a lot of kind of policemen these days, or back in those days. So yeah, he plays Detective Somerset. And then you have Brad Pitt, who had previously not done as many high profile movies as you think. So I mean, the big one beforehand he'd done was Interview with the Vampire, which is so freaking good, you know what I'm gonna say. And obviously that was like Tom Cruise and Kirsten Dunst and Christian Slater, very nice. And he, again, like previously he'd done like a lot of small roles, so he'd done like True Romance. I will be talking about True Romance one day. Freaking love that movie. Again, there seems to be a theme in a lot of movies that I talk about. And also his like big breakout role was Thelma and Louise as well, so that is pretty awesome. And he plays Detective Mills. So he is essentially a policeman who has been in the police force for a while, but he is new to the town. So he is essentially, the first time that him and Somerset meet is at the first crime scene, but I'll be talking about that when I start talking about the film, basically. And it also stars Kevin Spacey, who used to be one of my favourite actors, actually. When I was growing up, he was just in the most amazing films, and Usual Suspects, basically, is like my favourite film of all time. I've probably mentioned it about 700 times. and he, again, like, he won an Academy Award for like Usual Suspects, so he is a fantastic actor. And in this as well, he plays John Doe. So this is actually going to be spoilers, so if you haven't seen this film, it's going to be spoilers basically. But yeah, he plays John Doe, who I don't know why this happened, but they didn't actually credit his name in the film to show that he was in it. I think because around the time he had won an Oscar, and he was quite high profile, I guess. So if they wanted to keep something like that quite low key, I think that's quite an interesting thing. I think they've only ever done that maybe in a couple of movies where like the main like one of the main people is not in the credits, but because you don't get to meet his character till pretty much right to the end basically. So yeah, he plays John Doe, and then you've got Gwyneth Paltrow as well, who plays Detective Mill's wife. I think her name is Tracy. Yeah, so I didn't actually write that down, even though she's quite a key character to the film. So yeah, those are the main actors in this film basically. So the whole premise of the film is there's a serial killer kind of on the loose, and he is, well, they don't know who it is. They are conducting murders that kind of focus around the 7 deadly sins. I'll be going through those in a minute, and essentially it's about, yeah, these two detectives over the space of, I think it is like 7 days, like there's something that happens every day, I'm pretty sure, and they are just trying to investigate who it is. And then, like I said, you have Morgan Freeman's character, and then you have Brad Pitt's character, who are trying just their best to find out who it is, and they so many times get so close and something happens for them to kind of not get John Doe basically, which is super clever. So that's basically the premise of the film. But when you think about it as like a whole idea of a film, I remember watching this when I was young, and I was just like, this is insane. Like the whole kind of, like, it's so strange. It's constantly raining in that film. Like if you watch it and you're kind of like, wow, it's really dull, like literally every day there is rain. I think the only time it doesn't rain is the last like part of the film. I could be wrong, but it's definitely raining for majority of it. So let's go through the 7 deadly sins, and I'll kind of explain how they work in the film. It's going to be quite gruesome, so if you have like a weak stomach, or again if you haven't seen the film, spoilers. But I'm hoping you have seen the film, because it came out in 95 and it is just an amazing film basically. So first off, we start off with gluttony. So this is the first case that they find. So they find this kind of really horrible like house where a guy has lived there, but the smell has just gotten too much because it just smells like a decaying body. So when they go inside, they find this guy who is quite large. He's been kind of bound, and his head is just like in a bowl, and I think he's been there for quite a while. I don't know, they might determine how long he's been there, but I can't remember. So essentially gluttony is, they kind of find this out like later on, the connection that Morgan Freeman kind of makes in the Bible. I think it must be the Bible, yeah. The 7 deadly sins. So his is for gluttony. So it's like a man who essentially just like is so fat he just like eats himself to death. And then we go to the next one, which is greed. And this one I found really interesting because it's just something not a lot of people think about. Not that I'm like into the Bible, but just this whole 7 deadly sins is such an interesting concept. And then yeah, so greed is basically a defense attorney is found kind of just, it's so strange. He's like, the way he put him is in between like the kind of justice scales. So it's kind of a pound of flesh, you know, just on the cusp of justice. So defense attorneys are those who are obviously to defend people who are on trial, regardless if they're guilty or not. So essentially the defense is there to determine that the person is not guilty. And obviously a lot of the time defense attorneys are quite frowned upon because they are defending murderers and rapists and stuff like that. So yeah, that's quite a, I'm not saying they're cool kills because that's just weird. They're not cool, but they're just very interesting that the way that they've conceived it. And then we go on to the next one, which is Sloth, which is the one that I think everyone remembers the most because it's the most disgusting one. So it's quite an iconic scene as well, where they go into this building and they go into this house where they're trying to find this child molester slash like drug dealer, and he has been missing for a while. I'm not sure how they kind of determined that he was missing, but he's the one where they find like him as like a fucking zombie body because he's been like starving him. So he's basically had him tied to a bed for, I can't remember how long it was, but they end up finding pictures of him just slowly decaying, and it's just such an insane scene because they don't know what they're gonna see when they get in there. So they have this whole SWAT team, and I think this is when they think that they found him, one of the times that they find him. So they go in this house and it's just completely covered in those smell things that you put in the car, obviously because the smell of decaying flesh is not nice. I haven't smelled it, thankfully. Hopefully I never will, but I've been told it's not very nice. So yeah, they just find this decaying body and they find like all these pictures of like his demise, really, which is fucking crazy. And he is alive. So one of the scenes that always, I don't know, it doesn't make me laugh, but it freaks me out, when John C. McGinley, I can't pronounce his name, but one of the guys from Scrubs, he's in like a shit ton of awesome movies. He plays like kind of the lead SWAT guy, and he goes up to the body and he's like, "Oh, you son of a bitch," or something like that. And the guy starts like coughing and freaking everyone out. So he's still alive, but he will die. I think Mills or Somerset says like if you flash even a light in his eye, he will die due to shock because he's just been in this dark room. So that one was for Sloth. I'm not really sure what sloth means, sorry. I'm not very educated in the 7 deadly sins. And then we go on to Lust, and this one is actually quite disgusting. This one is probably like one of the most well, they're all quite shocking, but this one is probably the most kind of squeamish ones, I guess. Again, I can't remember how they find out about it, but they find this shop, and this guy makes interesting like kind of S&M stuff. So what happens is, sorry, I can't keep on going back and forth, sorry, it's just like popping up in my head. So there's I think it's a strip bar that ends up being a murder, so they go to investigate and they find this kind of contraption on this guy, and essentially the guy says that I was forced to wear this strap on, which had a knife on the end of it, and he was forced at gunpoint to have sex with a stripper. I think she's a stripper or a prostitute. I think she might have been a prostitute with that strap on. And every time I kind of see that scene, I just instantly just like, cringe is not the word, but you know when you just like, oh, that's just like absolutely just fucking horrible. So yeah, that is Lust, because obviously, you know, a lot of people pay for sex and there's nothing, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but obviously when you're looking at someone who's trying to deal with the 7 deadly sins by making other people look bad because of it, you know, being a prostitute and paying for stuff like that is obviously frowned upon. So I guess Lust is like, you know, giving in to your temptation. But yeah, every time I see that scene, I'm just a bit like, oh, it's horrible. we're coming up to, well, we're almost coming up to the end of the 7 now, but the last one that kind of is part of that all is Pride. So this is a really interesting one that I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. So Pride, obviously a lot of people have pride and especially when it comes to women who are models. So the victim of this one was a model who was caught and he had disfigured her, and essentially I think he had like cut off her nose. I don't know why I said that weird. Cut off her nose, and what had happened was either in one hand she had a phone, and I think in one hand she had like some pills or something, and it was kind of established that if she wanted to survive she would have to live with this disfigured face, or she would just bleed out and not have to deal with her ugliness. And yeah, she ends up just dying because of her pride, basically, which, you know, is something that everyone deals with. Everyone deals with pride in their own way and deals with, you know, vanity and everything like that. I always thought that was quite an interesting kind of concept. So we're coming up to like the end of the 7 deadly sins, but the last 2 become quite like very interesting to the main aspect of the story. So when they're getting to a point where they don't think they can find like who the killer is because he's escaped so many times, a man who is covered head to toe in blood, he turns up at this police station with bloody hands, because earlier they had determined that there's no fingerprints because he is shaving off the skin of his fingers, so he doesn't have fingertips, which always made me wince up again so much, because it is just, when you think about it, scraping off your own flesh so you don't have any fingertips or like fingerprints, sorry, which is just insane. So yeah, you end up seeing Kevin Spacey's character John Doe turn up, and he basically just hands himself in, and then obviously they're kind of like, okay, why have you done this, what's happened, blah blah blah, and then he's like, okay, I have one more body that I want to show you, and again, spoilers, because it's an old movie and I'm talking about the movie. So he's like, okay, I will, you know, tell you everything if you come with me to find this last body, and then, you know, we can start trial, whatever, if we get and they're kind of obviously a bit hesitant, so he takes them out to this this kind of field in the middle of nowhere, and he yeah, this is where it gets really fucking dark, as opposed to any other part of the film being quite dark. So as I mentioned, Detective Mills, he has a wife named Tracy, and throughout the whole time she is feeling quite depressed and, you know, quite isolated, because she's moved to this new city and she doesn't know anyone, and the only person she knows now is Morgan Freeman's character Somerset, and Detective Mills, which is her husband, obviously, and she kind of tells Somerset that she's pregnant and she doesn't know what to do, because is she happy, does she want to stay? And, you know, this is when one of the most iconic kind of line in the whole film comes apparent. So when you know, they've got to this field, you know, he says to Somerset, oh, you know, it's down there, it's like this way, blah blah blah, but then a FedEx car starts driving down and gives the box to Mills. I believe it is to Mills, and so when oh god, when Somerset opens the box, because him and Mills are too busy talking, he's like, John Doe and Mills are kind of like confrontational, and he's not just, you know, being, you know, very nice to him, he's just kind of taunting him quite a lot. He kind of like, you know, I admire you, you know, I love that you have such a beautiful family. And he's like, shut up, you know nothing about me, and blah blah blah. And that's when he's like, oh, I paid Tracy a visit, and you know she was really kind of upset and blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, I took something with me, and he cut off her head and put it in a box, basically. I don't know why I'm laughing, it's just an awkward laugh. But yeah, this is when it becomes envy, because obviously Mills doesn't obviously believe him, because he's like, no, there's no way that you killed my wife and put her head in a box and it's over there. And he's like, yeah, I envy you. You have like the perfect life, the perfect wife. So I am envy. And that's when you kind of have that scene. He's like, oh, what's in the box, blah blah blah. And yeah, Somerset is kind of like, yeah, don't do anything, don't kill him, because and then obviously he finds out it's real, and Tracy's head is in there. You don't see it, which I think is a good thing, because it's just, you leave it to the imagination. Not that you would want to see Gwyneth Paltrow's dead head in there. So yeah, he then, Detective Somerset becomes Raph at the end of it, Raph, because he ends up giving into his kind of like hatred and wanting revenge. So he kills John Doe, and essentially that's how the movie ends. And it's just such a stunning film. Yeah, David Fincher is honestly, like, I think for a movie like this to be like one of his big breaks, it's like the most amazing film ever. And why I wanted to kind of use this movie as a kind of a staple, and I think because a lot of the movies that I talk about are just so different on their own, and a movie like this, because this is essentially a thriller, not a Michael Jackson thriller, but a thriller in itself. But there's just so many like twists and turns and things, that the tension that most movies I feel don't have anymore, that they lack a lot of. Obviously a lot of these actors are still performing and doing their thing, but I feel like, for example, Brad Pitt, this is like one of his greatest movies, hand down, because his kind of portrayal of like a detective who's so cocky, and he's like, yeah, I've seen it all, I know what I'm doing. And Somerset is like, yeah, you're still kind of quite young, yeah, you have been in the force for a while, but you have a lot to learn. Basically, he's basically just trying to be his teacher, even though he's days from retirement and he's trying his best to let go. But he's a guy who, is alone and lives by himself, isn't married, doesn't have kids, and is trying to just get on with his life. But then when he finds someone, I think like Somerset and Mills, when they kind of become friends, I think it's quite a nice special relationship that they have. I'm just going to put the lips on. I'm just going to choose which one, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with my lips, and I just freshened up a little bit because I want to keep this on for most of the day. But yeah, I just absolutely think this movie is so fucking great. Pardon my language. But yes, this was Se7en. Yeah, let me know what you think about it. If you like it, if you don't like it, tell me why. But yeah, this is my Makeup and Movie Monday. I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I film and upload every time I get a chance to. And yeah, thank you so much. I want to get to 100 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, sorry, by the end of the year, I just want to get to 100. No, I appreciate if you did subscribe, because yeah, I think, watching, and this is another way of appreciating, if you don't mind. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.